There comes a moment in life where silence speaks louder than words, where your actions echo louder than any explanation, or where your presence, or your absence, has the power to shake someone to their core. If you've ever dealt with someone who constantly pulls away, shuts down, or runs when intimacy gets too close, you know the exhausting cycle. You chase, they withdraw, you give more. They give less, you fight for connection while they escape into their world of distance. But let me tell you something. When you stop chasing, when you stop begging for crumbs, when you stop feeding the very pattern that keeps you trapped, everything changes. Ignoring an avoidant isn't about playing games. It isn't about manipulation. It's about stepping back into your own power, reclaiming your worth, and breaking the cycle that keeps you tied to someone else's fear. Because here's the truth, avoidants aren't indifferent, they're scared. Scared of closeness, scared of vulnerability, scared of losing themselves. But when you stop being the safety net, when you stop cushioning their retreat, suddenly they feel the weight of your absence. They notice the silence. They realize the distance isn't comforting anymore, it's confronting. And in that moment, you flip the dynamic. You go from the chaser to the chooser, from powerless to powerful, from waiting on them to living for you. So today, I'm going to break down 7 powerful shifts that happen when you ignore an avoidant, and how this one decision can change not only your relationship with them, but your relationship with yourself forever. Think about the exhausting dance you've been stuck in. You reach, they pull away. You give more, they give less. It's like running on a treadmill, sweating, panting, fighting, but never actually moving forward. That is the cycle of chase and retreat. And the moment you decide to stop chasing, to stop feeding into that dynamic, you break the very pattern that has been draining you. Why does this matter? Because every time you chase, you reinforce their avoidance. You confirm the belief in their mind that closeness is suffocating, that you will always come closer if they step back, that they never have to step up because you will always do it for them. Your chasing becomes their permission slip to keep retreating. And the more you run toward them, the faster they run away. But the moment you stop, everything shifts. When you no longer chase, you disrupt the rhythm. Imagine a tug-of-war rope. As long as you keep pulling, they keep pulling back. But if you suddenly drop the rope, what happens? They stumble. They lose balance. That's exactly what happens when you stop feeding the cycle. You stop giving them something to resist against. For the first time, they are left alone with themselves, with no one to push away, no one to blame, no one to run from. And this is where the power begins. Because silence makes people hear what words could never say. Your non-reaction speaks louder than your arguments, louder than your begging, louder than your explanations. Suddenly, they are confronted with the truth that you will not endlessly participate in a game that keeps you small. That realization hits deeper than anything you could ever tell them face to face. Breaking the cycle also liberates you. You stop being trapped in a pattern that steals your energy and self-worth. You begin to see that your value was never in how hard you could hold on, but in how powerfully you could let go. And in that space, you gain clarity. You see the relationship for what it is, not what you hope it could be. You recognize that love shouldn't feel like a chase, and connection shouldn't feel like punishment. When you stop chasing, you're no longer the powerless one begging for scraps. You're the one who sets the tone. You reclaim your dignity, your self-respect, and your energy. And whether they step forward or not no longer defines you, because you've already broken free from the loop that once controlled you. That single choice, to stop engaging in the chase, can be the most radical, life-changing move you ever make. There's a strange paradox in human connection. Sometimes the most powerful message isn't spoken, it's felt in silence. Words can be debated, dismissed, ignored, or even twisted. But absence cannot be denied. When you stop responding, when you stop explaining, when you stop filling the silence with endless proof of your love and commitment, your absence begins to scream in a language the avoidant cannot escape. It speaks directly to the space they created, and for the first time, they feel the echo of it reverberating back at them. You see, an avoidant often convinces themselves that your presence is guaranteed. They expect you to reach out after their withdrawal. They assume you'll always be the one to call, to check in, to remind them they matter. They take comfort in the safety net of your pursuit, believing they can retreat without ever losing you. But when that safety net disappears, when the constant stream of attention, reassurance, and effort vanishes, they are confronted with something they never anticipated, the sound of your silence. That silence begins to grow heavier with every passing day. It whispers to them when they wake up in the morning and notice their phone has no messages. It lingers when they scroll through their day and realize you're no longer watching, no longer chasing, no longer reacting. What they once mistook as suffocating suddenly feels like oxygen they no longer have, and make no mistake, this absence unsettles them in ways your presence never could. Because absence forces awareness. It turns the mirror back onto them. They no longer have the luxury of blaming you for being too much or too needy, because now there is nothing coming from you at all. And in that void, the truth surfaces. It wasn't your pursuit that created the discomfort. It was their fear of intimacy. Without your constant presence, they must face their own patterns, their own fears, their own avoidance. That's a confrontation no words could ever force. But here's the deeper beauty. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to craft the perfect message or defend your choices. Your silence is the message. Every ignored call, every unanswered text, every moment you resist the urge to run back is a declaration that you refuse to beg for what should be freely given. Your absence becomes a boundary carved in stone, a reminder that love cannot survive on chasing, and that connection requires two people stepping forward, not one pulling endlessly. In the end, your silence becomes unforgettable. It lingers long after words would have faded. It makes them feel what they tried so hard to avoid, the cost of losing someone who once gave everything. And in that silence, everything begins to shift. There comes a moment when you realize that every ounce of energy you've poured into chasing, convincing, and proving yourself hasn't just been about love, it's been about survival. You've been fighting for a connection that always feels one step away, giving more than you receive, and mistaking their withdrawal as a reflection of your worth. But when you finally decide to ignore, to stop feeding into the cycle, something powerful happens. You reclaim your power, and with it, your self-worth. For so long, your attention has been focused outward. Every unanswered text was an arrow through your heart. Every retreat felt like a judgment against your value. Every cold silence made you question if you were enough. And in those moments, you gave more. You tried harder, you bent further, you compromised deeper, hoping that if you just showed them enough love, they'd finally stay. But that constant pursuit came at a cost. It drained you. It made you believe your worth depended on how much effort you could give and how much rejection you could endure. Ignoring shifts the entire equation. It's no longer about proving yourself to someone who doesn't even know how to receive you. It's about proving to yourself that you don't need their validation to know you're valuable. When you stop chasing, you stand tall in a truth that cannot be taken away. Your worth is not negotiable. It does not rise or fall based on someone's fear of intimacy. It is constant, unshakable, and already within you. And the moment you stand in that power, the dynamic flips. You stop waiting on their call, and they start noticing your absence. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and begin asking, "Why am I accepting less than I deserve?" That shift changes the energy entirely. They may feel unsettled, even drawn back toward you, not because you manipulated them, but because they sense something magnetic in someone who refuses to beg. Reclaiming your self-worth also clears the fog. You see things more clearly. You realize that real love is not about running after someone who fears closeness. It's about meeting someone who values connection as much as you do. And when you choose to ignore, not as a game but as an act of self-respect, you declare to the world, "I will not shrink myself to fit someone else's fear. I will not chase someone who runs from what I freely give. I am enough, with or without them." That kind of energy is unstoppable. That kind of strength makes you untouchable. And in that moment, you reclaim not only your power in the relationship, you reclaim your life. One of the greatest illusions an avoidant lives with is the belief that you will always be there. They pull away, you reach out. They disappear, you go searching. They shut the door, and you wait patiently outside. Over time, this pattern convinces them that no matter how far they retreat, you will still be standing at the edge of their world, waiting to welcome them back. That illusion gives them comfort, but it also enables their avoidance. They don't have to risk closeness because deep down they believe you'll never truly leave. But when you ignore, when you stop chasing, stop waiting, stop reaching, you shatter that illusion. You trigger the one fear they try to bury under distance and detachment, the fear of losing you. This fear cuts deeper than they like to admit, because while they may run from intimacy, they still crave connection. While they push away, they still want to know you'll be there. And when your presence disappears, it forces them to face the possibility that they may have pushed too far. It doesn't happen instantly. At first, they may try to convince themselves they don't care. They may act like your silence means nothing, like your absence is a relief. But as time passes, the absence grows heavier. The lack of messages, the empty notifications, the silence where your voice used to be. It begins to eat away at the story they've told themselves. They begin to wonder, what if they've finally had enough? What if they're not coming back this time? That thought alone can stir emotions they've spent their whole life trying to avoid. And here's the beauty. You're not doing this to play a game. You're not ignoring to punish. You're simply choosing yourself. You're reclaiming your energy. But in doing so, you force them to confront reality. They no longer have the guarantee of your unconditional pursuit. They no longer get to test the limits of your patience without consequence. Suddenly, your silence forces them to question their choices in a way your words never could. Fear of losing you becomes the spark that shakes their avoidance. It pushes them to reconsider the walls they've built, because now those walls aren't just keeping them safe, they're keeping them alone. And the truth is, no avoidant ever truly wants to be alone. They want love, they want connection, but they want it without the risk. Your silence makes them realize the risk of pushing you away may cost them the very thing they secretly wanted all along. And that moment, that confrontation with loss, can change everything. When you decide to step back and ignore, it's easy to think of it as punishment, as if you're withholding something to teach them a lesson. But that's not the truth. The real power of your silence is that it creates space. Space they've never allowed themselves to feel, space where their avoidance has no one else to cover it up, space where they are left to face themselves. And that space is often the very thing that sparks their growth. For so long, you've been their cushion. Every time they retreated, you closed the gap. Every time they created distance, you filled it with reassurance. Every time they ran, you chased, making sure they never had to experience the full consequence of their withdrawal. You softened the edges of their fear, and without even realizing it, you protected them from the discomfort that could have pushed them to grow. Your pursuit kept them safe, but it also kept them stuck. But when you ignore, when you finally stop running after them, that safety net vanishes. They are left with the silence, the void, the emptiness they created. At first, it may feel like relief to them, but as time goes on, the relief turns into restlessness. The space becomes uncomfortable. Without you filling the gaps, they are forced to notice the patterns they've built, the constant running, the endless walls, the fear that drives them. And for the first time, they can't escape from it because you're not there to distract them from themselves. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth is born in discomfort, in those moments when you are forced to confront the very things you've avoided. By ignoring, you don't harm them. You give them a chance to finally face what's been buried beneath their avoidance. They have to ask themselves questions they've been running from. Why do I push away the very thing I want? Why do I sabotage closeness? Why does silence feel safer than connection? Those questions don't come when you're chasing. They only rise in the space your silence creates. And whether they admit it or not, that silence can become the turning point. It doesn't guarantee they'll change, but it gives them the opportunity to. It places the responsibility back where it belongs, on them. No more leaning on you to fix the imbalance. No more hiding behind your effort. They either face themselves, or they risk losing the very connection they once thought was permanent. That space, your space, becomes the mirror they can't turn away from. And sometimes, that is exactly what they need to grow. When you finally make the decision to ignore, the shift isn't just about them, it's about you. For so long, your energy has been tied up in monitoring their moods, analyzing their silences, and carrying the weight of the relationship on your shoulders. Every ounce of focus went outward. What are they thinking? Why are they distant? What did I do wrong? That constant state of emotional hypervigilance drains you, leaving little space for your own needs, passions, or healing. But when you stop feeding the cycle, something incredible happens. You redirect that energy back to yourself. Ignoring isn't about closing your heart, it's about opening it in the right direction. Suddenly, the time you once spent overanalyzing a cold text or replaying the last conversation is freed up. That emotional bandwidth becomes available to pour into yourself, into your growth, into the things that bring you joy and fulfillment. You start remembering what it feels like to be more than just someone else's option. You remember that you are a whole person with dreams, desires, and a life that extends far beyond their avoidance. This shift is powerful because it recenters you. For so long, your sense of worth has been linked to how they respond to you. If they showed interest, you felt valuable. If they pulled away, you questioned yourself. That constant push and pull created a dependency where your self-esteem lived in their hands. But when you stop chasing, when you ignore, you take it back. You begin to see that their silence is not a verdict on your value. It's a reflection of their own struggles. And with that clarity, you start to heal the parts of yourself that kept you bound to their approval. Focusing on your healing doesn't mean you harden or become bitter. It means you finally give yourself the same love, patience, and attention you were so willing to give them. You nourish your mind, body, and spirit. You set boundaries not as walls, but as protection for your peace. You begin to align with people, opportunities, and experiences that actually meet you where you are, instead of pulling you back into a cycle of lack. The truth is, ignoring an avoidant frees you from being stuck in their shadow. It gives you permission to step into your own light. It allows you to shift from constantly reacting to their distance to actively creating your own direction. That is how healing happens. Not by changing them, but by reclaiming yourself. And once you pour into your own growth, everything about the way you love, live, and lead transforms. There is a moment in every journey when the power dynamic flips. For weeks, months, maybe even years, you've been the one reacting, the one waiting for their reply, the one adjusting your energy to match their moods, the one walking on eggshells just to hold onto a fragile connection. In that space, you felt powerless, like your happiness lived in their hands, like their avoidance determined your worth. But when you decide to ignore, not from bitterness but from strength, you reclaim control in a way that changes everything. You see, avoidance thrives on reaction. Every time you chase, every time you explain, every time you try to fix what they broke, you hand over your power. You show them they can dictate the rhythm. They step back, you step forward. They retreat, you fill the gap. That cycle keeps you small, but when you ignore, when you resist the urge to react, the rhythm stops. You're no longer dancing to their music. You're setting your own beat. And in that silence, the roles shift. Suddenly, they don't know what comes next. They can't predict your move. They can't rely on your pursuit. For the first time, they're the ones questioning, where did the energy go? Why aren't they chasing? What does this mean? That confusion is powerful because it forces them to realize they no longer hold the reins. You do. This isn't about manipulation. It's about liberation. By choosing not to react, you choose not to be controlled. You step out of the loop that drained you and into the space where you decide what happens next. You stop being the person who waits and start being the person who chooses. You choose peace over chaos. You choose self-respect over desperation. You choose strength over chasing. And here's the magic: the moment you shift into that energy, you become magnetic. People are drawn to those who stand in their own power, who don't beg for love, who don't crumble under silence. That magnetism isn't just felt by the avoidant, it's felt by everyone around you. You radiate strength, and strength is attractive. What changes most is not just how they see you, but how you see yourself. You stop identifying as the one who is powerless, the one who can't let go, the one who always waits. You begin to see yourself as someone who sets the tone, who commands respect, who knows their worth. And once you taste that kind of power, you will never go back. Because when you stop reacting, you stop giving away your energy. And when you stop giving away your energy, you finally realize it was yours to command all along. When you step back and choose silence, you are not abandoning love, you are reclaiming it. You are reclaiming the love that begins with you, the kind that isn't conditional on someone else's approval or presence. By ignoring an avoidant, You send a message not only to them but to yourself: I will no longer participate in a cycle that diminishes me. That choice is powerful because it shifts the focus away from their behavior and back onto your strength. It stops being about what they did or didn't do, and it becomes about who you decide to be moving forward. The truth is, avoiding someone who avoids you is not about revenge or playing games. It's about breaking a cycle that has kept you trapped in endless frustration. When you stop running after someone who constantly pulls away, you reclaim your peace. You allow yourself to breathe again without waiting on their texts, their calls, or their decisions. You remind yourself that your life cannot and should not be lived in reaction to someone else's fear. In doing so, you create a space for healing, growth, and clarity that was impossible to reach when you were caught in the chase. And this act of stepping back doesn't only affect you, it impacts them as well. Silence is a mirror, and in that mirror they are forced to see the reflection of their own choices. They are confronted with the consequences of their distance, the reality of their walls, and the cost of their avoidance. While they may try to deny it at first, eventually the weight of your absence grows too loud to ignore. That silence becomes the teacher you could never be with words. And whether they change or not, that lesson remains theirs to face. But here's the most important part. Ignoring an avoidant changes you before it ever changes them. It shifts your energy from desperate to deliberate, from reactive to proactive. You stop existing as a shadow of their decisions and begin standing tall in your own. You start pouring into your growth, your passions, your peace. And as you do, you rediscover the version of yourself that was never meant to shrink in the first place. The powerful, worthy, whole person who doesn't need to chase love to prove they deserve it. This transformation is what makes ignoring so life-changing. It isn't passive, it's active. It's the decision to stop feeding what breaks you and start building what heals you. It's the declaration that your worth cannot be defined by someone else's fears, and your love cannot be diminished by someone else's silence. It's a choice to walk away from the cycle of pain and toward the path of power. And that choice, more than anything, is what creates lasting freedom. So remember this: ignoring an avoidant doesn't mean you stop loving. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start loving and caring for yourself enough to no longer be consumed by someone else's patterns. It means you choose strength over struggle, peace over chaos, dignity over desperation. And when you make that choice, you don't just change the relationship, you change your life. Because in that silence, you discover the loudest truth of all: you were powerful all along. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If this message touched you or gave you strength, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful content every single week. Your support means the world. It helps this channel grow and keeps me inspired to bring you the guidance and motivation you deserve. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story and how this resonated with you. Remember, your voice might be the encouragement someone else needs today. Until next time, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never forget your worth. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.